Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how I went from having literally over $2,000 per month in car payments to not having any car payments whatsoever because I paid off all of my vehicles. And with the information I'm going to give in today's video, I do believe that the average person could apply a lot of this to their own situation and put themselves in a situation similar to mine where you don't have any sort of car debt. Like that's the American dream, is to not have a car payment, right? Before getting this video though, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. So we'll start this video off by going over the vehicles that I own. This is the first one. It is a 2021 Gen 3 Ford Raptor. It's got the 37 Performance package. I think this thing's stickered for like $82,000 roughly. And then, squeezing through here, the garage is kind of empty right now. We've got my 2022 Shelby GT500. Now, I actually just sold this car for something else. I'll have an update on that on the main channel once everything is finished. But anyways, this stickered for right around $80,000. And as cool as these are, the coolest thing about both of them is that, well, they're both paid off. So here's another behind the scenes thing. First off, I am completely barefoot. Secondly, I always film these videos during night, if you're wondering. And thirdly, yeah, there's a bunch of snow and ice on the ground. It's like 10 degrees outside. Okay, I'm over exaggerating. It's 20 degrees outside. It's a little bit warmer than that. Yeah, but this is what I do. I don't know why I do this. I'm crazy. But anyways, here is the wife's Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro 2022, stickered for about $55,000. And then my Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392, stickered for about $86,000. That's also 2022. If you're wondering why the Jeep's outside, it's because it's getting a new windshield tomorrow. So yeah, but again, both of these also paid off. So let's talk about the car purchases that I've made over the last few years that have put me in a position where I no longer have any car payments. And I can tell you right now, it's such a good feeling to not have any car payments because it's like this huge stress was lifted off my shoulders. And again, just not having that reoccurring payment every single month, it's so nice. Obviously, I still have car expenses because insurance and, you know, like the windshield on the Jeep that's broken right now, that's another expense. But it's not like that. Insurance is every month, but stuff like the windshield, that's hopefully not going to happen every single month. So the first couple of cars that I purchased as a teenager were basically just clunkers. I paid cash for them, and that's what I recommend you do as a teenager. Don't try to buy a nice car. You're probably going to wreck the car, right? You're going to hit it into stuff and everything because you're learning how to drive, and you're probably not going to take care of it. The first car that I owned, I didn't even give it an oil change, like ever. I don't know how that car kept going. Like somehow it just kept going without any oil changes. But yeah, that's my advice there, and that's exactly what I did. Now, moving on from that, the first, big car purchase I made was a lease on a Subaru Impreza. Now, I actually had to have my mom help me out with getting this lease, but it was a really good deal for me because the car payment was extremely low, which made it so it was affordable for me at the time. And then on top of that, the Subaru Impreza happens to hold its value really well. So after putting quite a few miles on that car and kind of beating it up a little bit, because again, I was still pretty young and still learning how to drive, I was able to sell that car for not exactly what I paid for it, but pretty dang close. So I didn't really lose a whole lot of money on that purchase. Now, the next car that I purchased that I basically still had the Impreza during was the Porsche Boxster S. It was a 2006 with a manual transmission. And long story short, I sold that car for what I paid for it. And this is what I wanted to continue to do with sports cars, is buy sports cars that were, somewhat desirable in the market to where I could sell it pretty fast and then also not lose money. And well, apparently I didn't know enough at the time, because the next two purchases I made was a Ram 1500 Rebel of 2018 and then a 2017 Shelby GT350. And so with the Rebel, I did a lease on it because I thought that, well, the first time I did a lease, it ended up really good, so I'll do a lease again. And the other thing that was going in through my mind is, well, the new body style Ram 1500 had just been released when I did the lease on this truck, and I'm like, okay, well, if the value drops a substantial amount, then, well, it's a lease, so I can just wash my hands clean. And well, it's not exactly what happened. So after I traded that truck in and the GT350 in for the next vehicle that I'll talk about, I ended up losing almost $12,000 between both of the vehicles. And this was a big lesson for me. I first took out of that I shouldn't lease vehicles anymore because the chances of me being able to make any money are pretty much none, right? And then the other thing that went into it is, when it comes to purchasing a sports car, I need to purchase something that is super desirable on the market today and tomorrow, because a sports car is a want and not a need, and losing that amount of money in a sports car just doesn't make any sort of logical sense. This is going to go against my whole goal of getting into a position where I no longer have any vehicle debt. And so I traded both those in for a 2019 Ram 1500 1500 Rebel. Now, I bought this Rebel during a month where Ram was offering 15% off of MSRP, and then you also got dealer discounts on top of that. And so I literally paid like 40 something thousand dollars for a almost $60,000 MSRP truck. And so after 6,000 miles, when I sold that truck, I sold it for what I paid for it. And so it was a really good deal for me yet again. Now, I ended up trading that truck in for a Gen 2 Ford Raptor, a 2020. And the Raptor was a similar situation where it's a truck that's super desirable still today, right? Even though we have the Gen 3 Raptor, people are still paying stupid amounts of money for Gen 2 Raptors. And so I was able to basically put like 15,000 miles in the truck, beat it up, and still get top dollar for it. And so that was a really good deal for me. Now, while I had the Gen 2 Raptor, I also had a couple more sports cars. One of them was the Camaro ZL1 1LE, and I basically bought this car right when COVID hit, and I did it on purpose because I knew that people were going to be freaking out because of the whole COVID situation, and they weren't going to be buying cars, and that's exactly what happened. So I went and bought a car during that time, right, against what everyone else was saying you should do, and I bought it for so cheap that when I traded it in on the Supra, I ended up getting more money than what I paid for the car, which on a trade-in, like you never hear that happening, but that's kind of what happened during that market. And then with the Supra, a similar situation where I basically sold it for what I paid for it. And so as you can see, right, since that big loss, I was constantly selling cars for what I paid for them and still making payments on them. I was paying down the cars quite a bit. And so I continued to kind of hone that focus. Now, after the Ford Raptor, I bought the Ram TRX, and I just recently sold that truck. Now, with the Ram TRX, the whole point of me buying that truck was purely for content. I actually wasn't really planning on making any money on the truck itself. Now, the market on that truck actually went pretty crazy, which was awesome. But the big thing for that truck is it was something to make money on the main channel, which it ended up doing very, very well. And I obviously recently got rid of that. Now, I did lose a little bit of money in the truck, but not nearly as much as I expected, considering everything that is going on in the market right now, and especially with the values of Ram TRXs. And so again, it was another situation where, you know, I basically made a ton of money off the content on the truck. I'll be straightforward about that. And then, you know, on the truck itself, I didn't really lose all that much money to depreciation. Now, another vehicle that I owned during the course of the Ram TRX ownership was a 2017 Ford Focus RS. Now, this was probably one of the best deals for me ever because I bought this car, again, when the car market was kind of pulling back a little bit, and then I ended up selling it for like $7,000 more than I paid for it. And now the car is actually for sale right now, I think, and it's for sale for what I paid for it. And so I'm like going, you know, maybe I should just buy it again to then sell it for more yet again, because that, yeah, it's just funny. If you buy certain cars at the right time, you can get a pretty good deal on them. Now, the other one was a Ford Bronco First Edition. This was one that I basically planned on doing a bunch of content with, but what ended up happening is it just didn't work out. So I ended up selling it, and I made a bunch of money on that one as well. There's a bunch of videos where I've talked about that whole situation, but that was really good for me in 2021 because I had two cars in 2021 that I bought and sold that I made like well over $20,000 on. And so you can imagine all of that positive equity went into paying down the other loans that I had at the time. And now that brings us to today, where I have the four vehicles that I have. So that Ford Bronco and that Ford Focus RS that I just talked about, I basically used the money from those to pay for my Gen 3 Raptor. And I did a situation where it counted as a trade-in. And so I got all the taxes paid for on the Gen 3 Raptor. It was a really cool deal for me, frankly, because I bought an $80,000 truck, and the dealership ended up cutting me a check back for like over $30,000 because of all of the money that I made on the Bronco and the Focus RS. So again, great deal for me. So that truck was paid for in full at purchase time. And then the other two vehicles I purchased this year, the Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro and then the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392, those I just paid for in cash up front. And the reason that I was able to do that is because I haven't lost like any money over the last few years in depreciation on cars. Like I said, I had that one big loss, and since then I haven't lost anything. I've actually made money on the purchases, and so it's allowed me to save up enough money to be able to pay cash for a car rather than financing it. And so that's what happened with both those cars. And then the last car is that GT500. Now again, I traded in the TRX on the GT500, so it zeroed out the taxes with that particular purchase, and the TRX actually still had an auto loan on it. That was the last vehicle that I had taken out an auto loan on, and the amount of money that I owed on the loan was about it was a little little bit under $20,000. And so what I did is I basically just paid off the remaining balance on the TRX with the trade on the GT500 so that the GT500 didn't have any sort of auto loan on it. And again, the reason that I was able to do that is because, well, I was able to save up a little bit of extra cash because I wasn't paying that cash in the form of depreciation on the other vehicles that I purchased. Now, I'm not going to pretend that if someone applied the tips that I gave in today's video that they're going to be able to magically own $400,000 worth of cars, right? You still have to make enough money to be able to afford that amount worth of cars. But I mean, if you literally divide that number by like 10, 40, go to $40,000, right? That is, you know, an amount that I feel like the average person can afford on a vehicle, around $40,000. Well, again, there are tons of cars that are within that price range that hold their value really well, and they happen to have just a hot market about them, right? People want that car, desirable cars, right? A really good example right now is the new Honda Civic Type R. Now, yeah, finding a Honda Civic Type R at MSRP is extremely difficult, but it's not going to be impossible. And I'm just giving that as an example in this video. So the point that I'm trying to make is instead of buying your regular run-of-the-mill vehicles that depreciate heavily, buy something that, you know, has a little bit of excitement behind it, that people are willing to pay a little bit of extra money for, and then do the legwork that's associated with finding a deal on that particular car, so then you don't lose any money to depreciation, and then you can, again, pay down that car. And then once that car is paid off, when you want to buy something new, you just trade it forward, and you continue to just trade things forward. And again, you'll eventually be in a situation where you won't have any car debt. And like with the situation I'm in right now, with the values that I have on all of the vehicles, like I won't have to take out a car loan ever again. And again, that is such a nice, freeing feeling. So hopefully this video helps you guys out. And you know, again, I really believe that it's scaled down to something that's a little bit more affordable than what I have. I think this is possible for everyone if, again, they're willing, I guess, to concede certain features. Like, again, I'll use the Honda Civic Type R as an example. That car has a manual transmission, and, you know, it's got like crazy sport bucket seats and everything. So it's not necessarily the most like luxury-based vehicle on the planet. But, I mean, I would be okay with driving a manual transmission car if I knew that that car was going to hold its value really well. And I do the same thing with my cars, right? A good example is going to be that Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392. That vehicle is not very practical. It's got tons of wind noise. It's not exactly the most comfortable suspension. The steering is all over the place, but that is a vehicle that holds its value substantially well. And so it's like, I'm okay with dealing with the quirks of that vehicle to have something that holds its value. Anyways, I'll see you guys.